Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I'm back with another emergency card kit. If you're new here, emergency cards are based on free kits that I've been releasing on my channel for almost 3 years now. And they're intended to help you stock your stash so you're prepared for any card emergency. Whether it's a birthday you forgot about or someone who's in town and you didn't know they were coming, or you need to say thank you to a teacher, these have you prepared. They leave room for a sentiment in one of two key sizes. Maybe I need a birthday card instead of one that says, "I heart corgi butts." There are over 1,600 different circle sentiments in the exact same size, so it's really easy to swap that in. But I've also left room on these cards for our rectangle sentiments that are 2¼ by 1¼ inches. Or on this one, I really wanted to leave room here for a decorative element, so I've used one of our strip sentiments. No matter who the card is for, emergency cards are a great way to make sure you're getting the perfect sentiment for the perfect person. Let's take a look at this kit. It is the Paws and Dogs sentiments. It was supposed to cover all of the fuzzy furry critters, cats and foxes and yetis and all the things, but it was enormous, right? This is about the same size as our kits have been lately, almost 50 pages, and it's just dogs and then generic like animal sentiments. So there will be more critter kits coming up. Cats will be in the next critter kit for sure. And we'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. But my plan is this fall, you'll get those. Have a possum birthday. Happy birthday to my favorite human. Just a little pause to wish you a treat-filled birthday. May your day be filled with dogs. Hope your birthday is golden. I heart corgi butts and furry mutts. In dog years, you're really old. This is a 1¾ inch circle sentiment, and if you use a punch or a die and you just kind of wiggle it until you can't see that printed circle, you'll know that you have it centered. I'm bad at centering, so it's helpful for me. But then that second page, I removed the printed circle so you can use a different size or a different shape altogether. Next, we have our card sketch. I love this one, and if you want to do some kind of focal image, a stamped or die cut image, something like that, I would replace the sentiment mats and do like a strip sentiment and then put your focal image here. But then there's also some ideas to stretch a sketch. These 2 pages of sentiments and the card sketch are available completely for free right here in YouTube. Click on the description box below the video. Just click more or show more and it will unpack that box. You'll find all the information you need. All I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. I do have a membership program over on Patreon, and the lowest tier is a free membership, and you can get bonus pages just for joining us over there with the free membership, and then you're in a community of really wonderful crafters. So here we have all of the same sentiments, but I've added one more. This potty time happens twice. I love that you don't need any punches or dies here. You just connect the tick marks with your trimmer, and you get a bunch of perfectly cut sentiments. So those are the rectangles. Then we have strip sentiments in 4 fonts. Again, pretty much the same sentiments, but we also have Pugs and Kisses, Do I Smell Cake, Treat Seeking Missile, and Have a Possum Day, in addition to Have a Possum Birthday. So a little more variety there. We have 4 fonts. These are a little more whimsical. And then we have a scripty font and a classic serif font. The Patreon free download also gets some digital paper. So we have this wonderful Dalmatian print. I suppose it could be a cow print, but I feel like the spots are too small. So Dalmatian print here. And I love this because it's black and white. I've gotten a lot of feedback that people say, "Oh, I really wish I had a color printer. I can't print any of your digital paper." Well, I'm trying to keep that in mind as I'm designing, so you have at least a few options. I want to pair this one then with some of these beautiful, hilarious dog papers. So on these, this is meant to be really flexible. This one is slightly larger than your A2, your 4¼ by 5½. And then this one is slightly wider and slightly taller than an A2. So we have this guy here, again, still in that free Patreon download. And then we have this one, and I love the color of this background. I love the sort of pink and yellow and bright colors that go with it. I do have paid membership over in Patreon. My lowest tier is $5. There used to be a $2 tier. If that's you and you're still paying for that membership, then you'll get the $5 kit, but that membership has been discontinued otherwise. The $5 tier also then gets a sketch database where you can search by card sketch or by card theme. Then they're going to get these lovely sentiments that have a super subtle background. It's gray, but it has the tiniest white polka dots all throughout, and it's going to coordinate with some of our pattern paper. Then they get it with white text on black. If you have a laser printer, you print with toner, then these are really great for foiling. Here again in our rectangles, we have that gray background, and then the polka dots are slightly bigger on this one. I'm going to try to pick it up and see if you can see it. My lights are so bright in this studio that sometimes that's hard to see, but then white text on black. And then we get our strip sentiments, all the same strip sentiments, same fonts, white text on black. There's tick marks to cut them out. I think this is my new favorite kind of sentiment. These are going to have the same sentiments, but then you get your little sort of clip art ephemera in the middle. So it's sort of all tied in together. These pair beautifully with pattern paper you may already have, especially if you don't want to print pattern paper. So again, same sentiments, but like, come on. And then we get a corgi butt. The first page has that printed circle. The second one, I've removed the circle, same as before. Then we get some additional pattern paper. This has the same sort of layout as the one before, but it's lighter and brighter, and our dogs are a little fuzzier, which I love. And then this one is so soft and cute and sweet. And I love this guy who thinks he's just like the coolest with his little sunglasses. Then we have some seamless pattern digital paper. These will print at a full 8.5 by 11. If you have the option to turn on borderless printing so it doesn't leave this white margin, it will go all the way to the edges for you. So I have a bunch of different backgrounds. We have this in white, blue, and actually it's showing up really bright on my camera, but it's a slightly muted blue, a light gray, a very pale blue in our background. It's one of my favorites. You're gonna see that background in almost every kit, but I would love to know in the comments, what's your favorite color for backgrounds for pattern papers like this? And then we also have this in a pale yellow. So all of that is at the $5 tier. I also have a $12 tier. They also have a sketch database, but within their database, there are direct downloads. So they can click on any particular kit and download it straight to their computer instead of going back to the video to find it. And then all of their circle and rectangle sentiments are resizable. They get those as image files, which is really great if you want to make a card where the sentiment is really the focal piece, or you're trying to conserve on paper or ink, because you can duplicate and delete certain sentiments if you want to. So we have the same sort of sentiment with clip art, but this has that pale gray background with teeny tiny polka dots in white. And then I took my 6 favorites and I made them bigger. These are about 3 inches. And so I have a lot of sketches that use a 3-inch circle as the focal image, and these work perfectly for that, even in the last few months. So if you just go back through some of the more recent emergency kit videos, you'll find great uses for these. Then I've turned some of them into digital stamps. If you are a colorist, and I do color, but it takes me a really long time, so I don't do it on camera very often. The ones at the bottom will fit in your 1 3/4 inch circle, but then these are a little bit bigger, okay? These are more like the size of a standard stamp. Here we have a bunch of our ephemera. Some of these were in the sentiments, some of these are in the pattern paper. They all fit in that 1 3/4 inch circle. The black circle here, that thick black circle, is even then a little bigger than that 1 3/4. So you can make sure you don't have to line it up and be too particular about it. So we have a page with a circle, we have a page without the circle. Then we have this page, and the puppies are all a little bit bigger. Like here's a standard size for a stamped image, and these puppies are about the same size, so it should feel very familiar. If you have the Champion tier membership, you will always get all of the images as resizable images, so you can make them any size that you want. But if you're at one of the lower tiers, like this is at that $12 tier, I wanted to give you a way that you could cut these out really easily without having to resize them. So I used my ScanNCut. I created a border that was, I think it's the 0.04, and that gave me that little white border around it. And then I went up one to the 0.08 and created a black border for each of them. And it worked out beautifully. So I have a bunch of dogs ready to go for my cards. I'm considering maybe trying to turn one of these into a print and cut that would be a shaped card. Let me know what you think. And if you like that idea, which puppy do you like the best? Which one should we try? Then at that $12 tier, we get more patterned paper. And I love, again, the sort of black and white for people who don't have a colored printer. I printed mine twice. My paper looks yellower over here. This is the one I use in my laser printer. So I might try to foil this, like maybe a rainbow foil I think would be fun. but then this one I just used my inkjet printer. I have started linking my printers below, mostly for informational purposes. Like, they are affiliate links, you can use them if you want, but I think your paper is more important than your printer. So I will link to the paper that I like. It's a matte photo paper, you guys. This feels, listen to this. This feels like a 65-pound cardstock, even though it says it's something else. And it doesn't really look any different from a regular white cardstock. Then we have it with that blue background. Again, this is showing up slightly brighter than it really is. Then we have a light gray, a very pale blue, a light yellow, a light pink. And then we move into some patterns you can use all year round for all kinds of themes, but the colors are going to match perfectly with the rest of the kit. So we have this striped pattern, again, in the same colors. I have that blue, I have light gray. This is a very pale blue. It's hard to pick up on camera. You can see just a ghost of it. Then we have light yellow, and then that same pink. So these are coordinating perfectly with all of our other patterned papers. And then finally, we have that teeny tiny dot pattern. You can see it best, I think, on this blue cardstock. But we have blue, gray, that very pale blue, a pale yellow, and a pale pink. So you get the entire PDF kit at that $12 tier. If you don't want to pay for membership or sign up for a recurring something, there is a link to just purchase the kit instead. And then that's a way to kind of get around that. As a final reminder, that champion tier then has the sketch database, the direct downloads from the database, resizable sentiments, resizable images, and then there's a second database that lists over 1,600 sentiments that I've released over the last almost 3 years that you can search by theme, by date, by whether or not it has coordinating ephemera and pattern paper. So many options in there. Let's make some cards. So this first one is really simple, and it's my craft roulette card. I have a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch black cardstock, and then this pattern paper is 4 by 5 1/4. But I have already made a mistake. We'll fix it. I'm going to glue together then these two strips. One is 2 inches wide and one is 1 3/4 inches wide. They're both 5 1/2 inches tall, so they're going to go all the way from the top to the bottom of the card. But as soon as I finish that, I remember there's this little strip over on the side, like a little pop of color, and I really should have added that before I added my pattern paper onto my black cardstock. It would have been easier. I'll do that on the second card, but for now, I just stuck my pokey tool in there to loosen things up. It hadn't really set yet, right? The glue was still a little wet, and I'll tuck that in there. And it's going to be just that tiniest little bit of pink on the side. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my strip. I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch over on that side. If you print out the card sketch page, the sketch is the same size as your card will be. So if you're worried about that strip, you certainly can just use the sketch as an alignment guide. And then I'm stepping away from the sketch a little bit. I used Emergency Card Essentials #1 to cut out a 2 1/2 inch scallop. And then my favorite circle dies to cut out the circle that goes on top of it that's 2 1/4 inches. And then I have my Dalmatian. Those are from the Saska tier or Champion tier version of the kit. Or if you just purchase the full download, it's in there. But this is the one that's a little bit bigger. He's more the size of a standard stamp, and I cut it out with my ScanNCut with a 0.04 inch border, and then I just cut one more time with a larger border, 0.08, for that black layer, and I just scanned it and cut it. Really, really simple. I am adding an action wobble onto the back of him. It's a little plastic spring that will help him to dance. I love that. It has adhesive on it, but I have trust issues, and so I go ahead and add a little bit of wet glue to both sides just to make sure it's not gonna go anywhere. This is not about action wobbles. This is just me not trusting a lot of dry adhesives. I've been making cards for a long time, and wet glue holds up better over time, right? It doesn't dry out, and that works nicely. I'm going to use a strip sentiment to finish this card up, and so this is the white text on black. So the Sassy Supporter tier and higher have access to these. I trim it so I can see the tick marks on either side, and then I just line those up on the blade of my trimmer, and I will have perfectly cut, perfectly straight sentiments every time. They're about 1/4 inch. And then I just use the finger guard on my trimmer to make sure that the edges on both sides, those margins between the letters and the edge, are the same. I like to go around the edge with a black marker. This one's an alcohol marker. A Sharpie works really nicely here, just so it looks like black cardstock. You don't get that flash of white as the card is turning. I wasn't sure if I was going to leave this plain or if I was going to add it onto a mat. And so I definitely wanted to put another layer of black cardstock behind it. It makes it look more intentional. In the end, I cut a strip of teal that matches our scallop circle. It's slightly smaller than 3/8 of an inch, mostly because I cut it wrong. Not shocking. And I'm going to pop this up slightly. I have 1mm foam from scrapbook.com. It's a 1/4 inch wide, so it fits perfectly behind these sentiments. And then I just used my pokey tool so I could sort of audition it and make sure I got it straight. And then look at this action wobble, you guys. I love it so much. So let's talk through the Craft Roulette parameters. If you're new to Craft Roulette, it is a weekly game show that pushes me to be more creative in my card making. I'll link to them below. But there were 4 parameters: card for a nerd, and our punny, funny sentiment is perfect for my nerd of a son. Beach colors, which I think of as bright and happy, the umbrellas and the different swimsuits. So our pattern paper is taking care of that. Hip, our dog has a hip and he dances with that hip on his action wobble. And finally, random is animal print. We have our Dalmatian print back there. You guys, please check out Craft Roulette. It is so much fun. For card number 2, I'm going to show you what to do with this little strip. I add this right away. So the first thing I do is add that 3.5 inch strip to my 4 by 5.25 inch cardstock. Then I will add that onto my A2 panel. I had a hard time getting this straight, and when I peeled it back off, I realized it's because my black panel isn't cut correctly. This black cardstock is from Michaels. I like it because it's pretty dark black. It's one of the best I've found, but they're not always cut to exactly 8.5 by 11, or sometimes the corners aren't square and things like that. So I always just have to remember to check. This little strip of pattern paper is slightly narrower, about 1/8 inch narrower than what the sketch says, because it's what was left over from the big square of pattern paper that's in the freebie Patreon kit. And I was like, I can make a card out of that. We're not throwing it away. So I just cut the mat down to 1 7/8 instead of 2 inches, and it looks great. To create our sliding mechanism, I have a strip that's 5.5 inches by 1.5 inches tall. And I'm going to score this at 2 inches right here, and then again at 4.5. You could move those, but really you need the middle section to be 2.5 inches wide, the standard rectangle mat. And then I'll fold both those score lines in the same direction. It's almost like making a mini belly band. They're going to overlap a little bit, and that just gives us a place to glue them together once we wrap them around this little strip of cardstock, right? So make sure you don't glue it to our big piece of cardstock or it's not going to move. You can see it there. It's just on that little section. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm not pressing too hard and nothing is oozing out before I move on. So I set that aside and let it kind of dry for a couple minutes. This is going to go top to bottom, but if I want to give it room to move, I need to add glue only at the top and the bottom. And I gave it maybe a little more than 1/4 inch. Really, how much glue you add determines how much movement is allowed. But this was plenty for me. And again, I let that dry for sure before I moved on, because if you push that up and it ends up in glue that's still a little wet, it's going to get stuck there, and we don't want that. So I've just centered my 2 inch mat on my rectangle mat, and now I'm going to glue a 2 inch circle underneath it. I can add glue all over it. I don't know why I didn't, but I'm paying particular attention to the top and bottom. I don't want it to ooze out, but I do want to make sure that it's glued down tight to that strip of pattern paper so that when I go to slide over the top of it, it's not going to catch on it and maybe accidentally start pulling it up. There's actually only one like inside outside sentiment set in this kit, which is shocking to me. I've been doing it a lot lately, but the sketches really can be used for any of the kits that we've released. So this is going to work just fine, but I was kind of like scratching my head. I had made the whole card before I picked out my sentiment. Use whatever you want. We have just a little Paws to wish you a treat-filled birthday. I've added them with removable adhesive in case I want something a little snarkier when I give this one away. But I love how we have our little puppy like right above the sentiment, and he's a party puppy. And then our Dalmatian paper. This is so simple to make. I'm going to make a whole bunch of these. I just think they're a lot of fun. For card number 3, we're making an off-center gatefold card with a vertical score line. So this is 8.5 by 5.5 scored at 1 inch and 5.25 inches, right? Really, really simple. And then I'm going to fold and burnish. They're heading towards each other. When it comes to my pattern paper, I'm starting the same way. I don't want to cut 1/8 of inches. And so I'm going to show you a trick for avoiding having to cut weird measurements. And then what if it's not quite the right size? So I'm going to use a little bit of mint tape. This is from scrapbook.com. It's like a Post-it tape, but cheaper. And I buy it in like a 5-pack. And then now it's like everywhere. I have so much of it because every time I order, I'm like, ooh, what if I need more? But I don't. It lasts forever. So I have added glue only onto the short strip where my pattern paper is going to go. That mint tape on the inside just holds the card closed so I can visualize those margins better. And then I'll very carefully open this up. I'll just save that tape for later. And I'm going to bring this to my trimmer. And I'm just going to line up the solid colored cardstock on the blade of my trimmer. And now I just cut about a 7/8 inch strip without having to measure that. I'm going to go ahead and add glue onto the other side, and I'm going to butt that right up against the center edge where it's going to meet. And I'm folding it closed while the glue's still wet. I have a little wiggle room to make sure that that top margin is the same. This strip of cardstock is 2 inches wide by 11 inches. And then I have 2 pieces for my mat. I'm figuring out like how far up do I think that strip is going to go, or my sentiment is going to go, because I'm going to layer those 2 pieces together, but then I'm going to temporarily adhere that just onto one of the open edges. I don't like using a scoreboard for belly bands because they end up too tight or too loose. I don't like it. So I just sort of wrap them around and finger press that fold to get started. I want to make sure on this second one that those strips are lining up straight. There's gonna be a gap in the middle. If you had like 12 by 12 cardstock, it would go all the way around, but it's not necessary. We're gonna cover that up. I cracked my cardstock here. Sometimes this happens. I just give it a little haircut with my scissors and no one's gonna know, but you could add a little moisture to the cardstock before you fold it, and a lot of times that will keep that from happening. I'm going to add my pattern paper onto the large section. I'm leaving gaps on the sides, right? Because we're going to have a little black cardstock showing. And then I'm going to butt this right up against the score line, and it's going to go down until we meet that gap, and I'll just trim it away. Again, I'm avoiding having to figure out weird measurements. Would this strip go all the way from the top to the bottom? Not the way I cut it, because I cut it at 5.5 inches. But if you cut a longer strip, you could just sort of fold the belly band and have the pattern paper cover the gap. That would work also. And then I'm just going to cover up our gap with our sentiment mat. So I will wrap this around the card so I can kind of see it. And then once I visualize things, I'm going to add glue onto the belly band. I don't want to accidentally get glue in that gap, and then all of a sudden my belly band is glued in place and my card doesn't open, right? So just onto the band itself, and then I'll add those mats and cut out my sentiment. I'm using I Heart Corgi Butts because it is hysterical to me. Every time I see corgis, I think of Irene Smith. She's over at Artemis Made 1 here on YouTube, and she makes amazing cards. She was just on Craft Roulette, but she sometimes posts pictures of her corgi. But it's so funny. All right, so here's card number 3. I would love to know which of these cards is your favorite. Friends, if you're interested in the free kit, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel, and all the information you need is in the description box below. There are also links over into Patreon where you can get the expanded free version of the kit. There's paid membership options for extra bonus pages, or there's a link into my shop where you can just purchase the PDF. Thank you all so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.